Right, here we go, Foundry and the hospital, on away we go. It's in 1877, the most dirty squalor it is, and it's all to do with miners and people in the iron foundries and all, and the best way to see how it goes through as quick as you can. Now, heritage site, we say we are in the heritage thing, but there's a pity really, because that one up there is in England. So we're just on the border up there, but we can help that, can us? Harvers of Ale, they came into Hale in 1779. John Harvey, who come from Carnell, he was born in 1730. He died in 1803. And they carried on, like we said, Harvers of Hale until 1903. But Henry Harvey, that what we'll be talking about, is 1775 till 1850. Because John Harvey had 4 daughters and 4 sons. But sadly, he lost 3 sons. And I think he lost one, he did lose 1 daughter anyhow, but we know that Jane Harvey married Richard Trevithick. I've just been researching a bit about Joanna Harvey, that's another daughter. She was married to William West, and he was the manager of the Foundry in the early 1800s, but he met a very untimely death. They found a hammer in the back of his head. I'm just researching that, I haven't got the picture of it yet. But we talk a little bit about Henry Harvey. Henry Harvey, single bloke, because he took over in 1803. He had a little girlfriend, and she had 10 children by him. And then we know that Jane Harvey and Richard Trevithick went off to South America in 1816 till 1827. Well, she didn't have a lot of money, so Henry Harvey took on her 6 children, and then sadly, one of his sisters died, and she left 6 children, so he ended up a single man with 22 children looking after him. Would have had lots of family allowance, wouldn't it? There we are. Now this is what you'll see down on the terrace. Not the fingers, because I am very good at taking photographs. Not their painting, not their hands, or my wife's hands actually. But we just talked about Richard Trevithick and Isambard Kingdom Brunel, and this machine here and them and other, but we'll just go on a little bit from there. We're talking about the River Hale. This is where most important. St Ives Bay there, and then you go up to the Cornish Copper Company, and of course Harvers of Hale. The Cornish Copper Company come in Hale. We won't be talking much about them, but in 1756 they carried on smelting copper till about 1813, 1814. Then they found an open cast mine in North Wales in the Anglesey called Paris, P-A-R-Y-S, and then they got rid of these 25 furnaces of copper house, smelting copper, so they closed them down, but they carried on the Cornish Copper Company till 1867, and then they went bust. I don't talk a lot about St Ives, even though I can see it from my house, look over to St Ives, but I just say to the missus, keep your curtains pulled. This is a very early photograph of Harvest Foundry there. We know it's before 1852. 1852. We know it's before 1852 because there it is there, look. This bridge, which was a single track, little steam drain there, was designed by Isambard Kingdom Brunel. Of course, you see the one there now, it's all granite. If you go over to Hale there, if you go over to Asda or Marks & Sparks, wherever you want to go. And that was put up in 1888. But this here was just timber, really, and wooden poles, designed by Isambard Kingdom Brunel and going right over the foundry itself. I just put this one in as an aerial view, you can see that, but there's the new one. This was all Harvers here, this was all the yard. There's a Colosseum we could talk about in a minute. But now put these in, look. South Quay, East Quay and North Quay. South Quay is where Asda is now. Now that was built by Henry Harvey by 1818. That was built. Now Cornish Copper Company, which was up the other end of course, they built this here East Quay over there. But what they forgot was, or somebody didn't get it right, Henry Harvey could prove that they built part of that quay on his property. So he took them to court and won the day. Now he offered to rent them back the quay, it was at a nominal sum, but they said no, so he took it over anyhow, so they built it. But I tell a lot of people, if you've got my Sammy Pilts now, you know, on the corner with the pasty shop, you pop in there and get a pasty, you'll see it get a big hole in there. Part of the key is caving away again. The last 2 or 3 weeks is gone. And they are actually, believe it or not, I've got permission to build houses there. And that was built on straw bales. That's when they didn't have concrete. That's when it was built. So there we are. That's North Quay there. I put this one in because somebody might be working slaves now. That was on South Quay. This is where Asda is now. And they come over from Powlis in 1953, and they carried on until about 1983, 84. But they were the structural engineers at that time. A little bit of scrap there, but that's what it was. Now, this is a lovely, interesting photo. I put this one in. This is Carnsue. And over there is North Quay. Now, Henry Harvey had that built in 1834 because when they were building ships, they built 79 ships in Harvey's altogether. From the early 1800s until 1895 was the last time they built the ship. But he needed a water because the Cornish Copper Company, again, you could go over by the North Quay or over where the swimming pool is, you'll see there's sluice gates. Cornish Copper Company was sluicing down through, moving all the sand, and the sand was coming over this side. Henry Harvey was trying to bring goods in. Of course, the sand was piling up, so he had Carnsue built. Say it opened in 1834, and then he could then sluice there and then move all the sand out through. But a little interesting fact is when GC3, which was overbuilt on the North Quay, well, I shouldn't go on to that too much because we're going up to the hospital in a minute. But when they built GC3, which was a secret thing for the Second World War, right next to the electric works, which was we call Associated Octal, they put a tunnel from there right underneath up to the electric works because the Associated Octal, they wanted the ethyl bromide for our airplanes in the Second World War, but they needed 2 million gallons of water an hour. We couldn't rely on the tide because you'd waste. So they used this in the Second World War. So it was fantastic, really. The Lent Quay, I always say, you know you're in hell. Look at that lovely clear sky there. But we got some here tonight, didn't we? That's the Lent Quay. That was built by the Trevethos because they weren't really keen. This was part of, that's over there is the North Quay. They weren't really keen on their boats. When the boats come in before they built all the quays, they used to just beach them on the sand and put horses and carts out and unload them and wait till the tide come in and take them out again. But Trevethos weren't happy with having their boats beached over there, so they built that quay. This is the biggest ship ever built in Hale, the SS Ramley. It was near enough 4,000 tons of metal. This is where Asda is there. And that was completed in 1894. Now this is an interesting one. This was the fastest steam paddle boat in the world. This was built in 1857, built by Arbus, the same as that there. But eventually it was sold to the Confederates for the American Civil War in 1861. And they used that as a gun runner and supplying food and materials down to the Confederates. It was going for about 2.5 years over there. But it wasn't built for them, but that's where it ended up. Built in Harvest. The last boat that was built was called Hale. There was 3 ships called Hale. You don't want me to put out all the numbers of all the ships, do you? No. But that was the last boat, and that was called Hale. Richard Trevithick, here we go. 1771 till 1833. He married Jane Harvey. Well, then called her Jane Trevithick. She was born in 1772. They got married in 1797. She lived till 1868. So she was 96 when she died. And she lived up Foundry Hill. I call it Pencleave, but that's Richard Trevithick. He built, you've got to imagine that he was a manager down Madron Mine. Because he'd come over to his brother-in-law, we all know, I say men, but I don't mean excluding ladies, but we know what Jan Lucas are. He wanted a little job on dinner night or evening, you see your mate in the Foundry, he we believe he used to say to Henry, look, I've got to come up with this idea, I come up with this. Well, of course, Henry was casting metals, and so it was being made, it was made in Hale. But all the timber work was made from Campbell. And that went on the road, high pressure steam. I say it wouldn't pass MOT now because the brakes aren't so good. But that went on the road, 24th of December, 1801. Up Canberra, not in Hale, up Canberra. Yeah, of course, he died 1833 in the Bull Inn in Dartford in Kent, because he'd come back from South America, he'd been over there 11 years, thought because of his inventions, which were fantastic, he thought that he could make a lot of money. By the time he got out there was all these wars and political things going on. They say he'd come back a pauper, and somebody had to pay his passage back from South America, and he did come back to Isle for a short time, but he went to the Bull Inn in Dartford in Kent, and that's where he died, and that's where he buried. Now, convert for a bet. He converted the car into a train and took it to Pennydower in it is South Wales, I think, but I'll say South Wales. Pennydower, and he had 5 carriages, 70 people, and he actually towed them 9.1 miles. He did it for a bet. Just a bit slurpy a minute, sorry. Foundry Square, early 1900s, this one. You'll notice that there, that is where Lloyd's Bank was. Go on from that, there we go. There's the White Hart there, look. You know that's 1838 because it says so on top of the thing. But that wasn't the first White Hart. First White Hart was that building, the Sonic Lodge, 1824. As I said, Jane, the family and all. So Henry had the Sonic built, and then in 1838, he had that built for him. Because we know that Richard had passed away then. I just put this one in. This just shows the station there, look. The railway station, which was down, if you bring where Asda is, with a bit of a garden in the front. That was the first railway station. 1837. No, I got another photo. There we are. 1837 that was there. Now that train went all the way up on Campbell Green, up King George's Walk. You can imagine where M&S is, but right up to Ingarrick, and then it went up to what we call Steamer's Hill, because it was pulled up the hill in Ingarrick. Part of the train went, or the tracks went down to the Treef, and the rest went up to all the mines and ended in Tresavini Lanner. So that was in 1837. That wasn't demolished, that building, until 1984, because we started to get tourists here, and the road wasn't going down. So it was knocked down. I pointed this one out, look. Look at that there, cupola, I think they call it cupola. A little fancy bit on top of the clock. But there we are there, look. Now this building, it says post office, you can see it now, it is a post office. But it was Trelesic Smelting Works from 1805 till about 1851, something like that. It was the smelting works, right in the centre of town. There we are. I point, as I said to you, there, that there, look, is where Lloyd's Bank, you know, there was a cinema there. You see how wide the road was. And this happened in 1935, so they decided, well, rather than put a new roof on, they took all the top off and just put a roof on the bottom of it. That was in 1935. Now, look at this. You could just see that. I think they painted over it now. This was the Emporium there, but that's Canubia Biscuit Works. That was one of the first automated. Now we're going here now from 1895 to about 1917. That's where they made biscuits on roller tracks. You know, that's what in that building. But I put that one in there. That's a grist mill. Now the grist mill, there's that old Sammy Phillips shop there. We're going up here now up to St Michael's, but that grist mill, you've got all these horses coming from Elston, St Ives, from all over here, of course. A lot of big mines, and they had to come in and bring all their ore in to be smelted down and all. They needed feeding. So that was the mill that was fed by the mill pond, and they had 3 big wheels in there, turning all the belts, etc., to grind everything down. That was the grist mill, and that was, I'm going to say, 1795, and it was taken down in 1939. Might be on there in a minute. I'll show you in a minute. So I put this together yesterday, really, and this is the big chapel that was down in Foundry, 1845. 1845, and we closed in 1967. How do I know that? My twin sister, because I'm one of 13, 10 boys and 3 girls. And my twin sister got married in there, and I think the man looked at us and thought we were going, we're not having no more. And the doors were closed just after my sister got married. 1967. Isambard Kingdom Brunel, 1806 to 1859. What a fantastic engineer. Well, I put this one in. Look at the size of the links. They never had McSilvers for lifting things up, did they? It was all horse pulling and everything. So I had 1 bit of horsepower. But look at the size of the links. That their chain actually was for the SS Great Eastern. Like you on here now. Here we go. Look, Great Western. 1837. This is all designed by Isambard Kingdom Brunel. 1837. The SS Great Britain, we know, was 1843. Eventually, he went over and he was found went into Falklands, bought that private enterprise. He's in Bristol. I've not seen it yet, but I'd like to go up there. I've got a job go past Canberra, really. I'd like to own it. Now, the Great Eastern, 1857 design, they started building. But look at the difference in the size. 18,000 tons compared to 1,000 tons. Because they had heard of a little place down the road called Australia. They needed a ship big enough, because it was steam, they needed to carry enough coal to go, they knew it was down there because they were putting all the roads down there, weren't they? They needed to have enough coal in the ship to go down, bring goods back, and all on one trip without paying. By the time this was launched, 1857, 1858, the time it was launched, they discovered coal in Australia. It was still used, it went down there, but also it was used for taking transatlantic cables over to America, Spain, all the way down through. It was such a vast ship then. And of course, we've got bridges, docks, hospitals, railways, ships, Thames Tunnel, and that there. Now, the Thames Tunnel is very interesting because a lot of the pumps, well, most of the pumps, for the Thames Tunnel, because it's like a proper spring, it's leaking now, but they've got electric pumps now. They were built and designed by Harvey's of Hale. The pumps were for that. But his son, I read a book recently, Isambard's son was called Isambard. He was 3 years old. He was the first person that went through that tunnel with his father, all the way through. Royal Albert Bridge. Now this has got a connection with the Cornish Copper Company, nothing to do with Harvey's. I put this one down in 1857. Putting this up. Because when you look, I'll go to that one because you can do that then. When you look at all these links, all this here, all these links, all these chains as you go across the bridge, they were made by the Cornish Copper Company. They weren't copper, as I said, because that had finished. They were doing iron instead of Harvey's. But Isambard Kingdom now liked what they were doing up in copper. So all the metal work, or most of the metal work, all the chains and the links for that were made by the Cornish Copper Company. And they said 11th of April, 1858, and the 2nd of May, over there, 1859, first 1859. Second, he went over. I wouldn't have gone over that, but that center one there, that was down 80 feet in the water when they was big enough. They had to find bedrock, and that extension. So you think what the engineering that they had to work down 80 feet. 80 feet to get bedrock to support that middle thing. Now we know that Isambard Kingdom came down with the books that I've read, and he went across that because sadly he died in September 1859. And then we go on about the Clifton Suspension Bridge. I don't think I put that on, but Clifton Suspension Bridge, we normally say that was done by him. Yes, he designed everything, and everything went to his drawings. But that wasn't finished until 1864. He dead back here, so he never saw it. Because he said we'll never stand gorge, but he proved him wrong, didn't he? I put this one in just quickly. This is J&F Pools. This is in Ale, 1848 to 1998. We'll go on from there. This is what a foundry, this is Harvey's Foundry now. Just the size of the foundry itself, which we'll have a look at now. Look at this. The biggest cylinders ever made, the Dutch government, Haarlemmer Lake. Anybody ever been to Schiphol Airport? In 1846, it was 20 feet underwater. But the Haarlemmer Lake was that big, that vast. The Dutch government, when they had a big storm because they were low, according to the North Sea, they were everywhere being flooded. So they come to Great Britain and they said what founders could make, design and make something. And they come up, it was Harvey's of Hale, the Cornish Copper Company, and Perrin foundries that come together. But these were made in Hale itself. Down, well, I'll show you when you come on exactly where they were made. We estimate them at 25 tons. They had to build a ship to take all these bits over. And they started pumping. They reckon it would have took over 100 years with windmills because they can only pump a certain depth. They started pumping in 1848, and by the middle of 1851, they created an area of over 112 square miles of land. 3 of them working all together. This was still working, might be on there now, look. That's the crookiest one. That was still working in 1931. Now I went over there, I'll tell you, I'll just get that in a minute. I got to go. I went over there in 2018 to have a look. I'd never been anywhere before, but anyway, I went over there and then I told them who I was and what I had to do and one thing and another. I was there about 5 hours. Fantastic tour. And then the lady came, I think she was the local mayor, I got a little box and she presented me with this nut. This nut was made in Ale in 1846. And of course, we go back to that one. Because all had be joined, didn't it, there, you know. And this was presented to me over there. So I put it in my suitcase. This is, well, you've heard this before, but this is true. I put it in my suitcase, never gave it a thought. Got over Schiphol, coming on after 3 days, and they called me forward. And I had to explain what that was. And the customs man said, one nut taking another nut home. You can see that nut there a bit later on, but that is true. And what I should have said, there's Jabez Bickle. Francis, that's Francis, yes, and that there is Billy Gilbert, Francis Harvey, Jabez Bickle. He was a great designer, you could tell that he's the boss of it, but the biggest 12-foot diameter never been created ever before or ever since. There we are. Look, when I look at this, I mean, you didn't know like putting a few blocks on plaster over and paint them, is it? But when you look at all the architecture there, it's fantastic, isn't it? But when I was over there, because I'm interested in civil engineering, I worked on some of the roads. Just be careful when you're driving, because I've done some of the bridges. So I went down below to see how it was all fitted in the ground, you know, and he took me right down. It was fantastic, really. But they got 2 of them there, connected up to hydraulics, and he started them up. It was fantastic. That got 8 arms on it. Do you imagine that cylinder was lifted up and dropped in, and they had put 8 arms in, going up and down pumping. So that's why they were able to do it so quick. This was a miscast, look, just to prove there's a horse and cart there coming through. See, the problem they had with that, when they cast it, because it was no good, they never had the infrastructure then to cut it up. So it was a few years before they could be able to smash it up and all, you know. I put this one in again, this just to say, we're talking about manpower, look, putting in these here cylinders everywhere, the amount of men needed for it, just to move everything along, just muscle on it, and power and wedges and bars and everything else. 8 foot, I hope I spoke, did I spell diameter right? I suppose I must have, and I done it today in Ari, but it's 8 foot. On the news, it was about the cholera outbreak in London. Well, they come down from London and went to harvest. That's an 8 foot diameter, and they reckon they saved. They made 75% of the world's pumps then, but a lot of them were shipped up to London. They reckon that they saved capital from a massive. They were dying. I think they said 127 people a day. I just listened to it tonight. Were dying of cholera at that time. They come down harvest, made the pumps, and go and get them more fresh water. If you go up by the mill pond, you will see this. Just a little archway. Henry Arby, this was in 1846, 1847. Henry Arby, because he got so much money out of the Dutch government and what he was doing, these walls are still here. what we call the plantation, King George VI Memorial up the top plantation. This was going to be his grand entrance, you see, and then he was going to have a house built, but he didn't live long enough. By 1848 he had a stroke, and he died by 1850. But Hamilton Oakham was a farmer, and he lived just about here, right next to it. And one day, I'm going to say 30, 40 years ago, the local council come and take all that away because it was so low. They couldn't with the modern vehicles now, lorries and all, they couldn't get through. Hamilton came out with his double-barrel shotgun. Nobody said it was loaded. But he came out with a double-barrel shotgun and told the men to quietly in his little words to get off and get out. By the time they got back to their office to report him, this was listed. This was the plantation, as we were talking about a minute ago. This is where Henry Harvey was going to have his house built. Now, he had all these paths and roads all dug out. And this is what they found. This is about 1848. They're digging up. Now, this is what we call the Cunady stone. But that's not it. That's it there. It's now in the Heritage Centre because it was deteriorating. But when they were digging up, they went down 4 feet. When they come across this burial ground, what they could decipher there was somebody was 30 years old, buried there in the 5th century. So we know that people would come down from Ireland and Liverpool and all like that. They never went, well, they did for a year or two, I suppose, some of the wrecks. But they come through Hale, believe it or not, up to St. Earth, and it was a tramp you could go up to where Loveless at that time, and you went across land near St. Michael's Mountain, and then you went to Europe. And that's the way they come back as well. So that's the Cunady stone. Here's Jabez Fickle, another one of his inventions. He had 5 sons as well, and most of them worked for Harvest. But I just say he's going down Newland, get ice cream on a Sunday afternoon. They're buried in St. Earth. This is the beginning of, if you go by the mill pond again, opposite that archway, you look out there, this is where the beginning of the Melanator smelting works, right? Now I've got another thing, I've got to cross here again now. What have I done with that? You can see this is rare as rocking horse, this is. I better not swear because that's long. This is pure tin from the Melanator, it was only given to me. Look, you don't now seen it, have you? This was given to me very, very recently. This lady was in her 80s and her father, she'd come to one of my talks and she was so pleased when I was talking about the Melanator smelting works. She gave me that, it's got Melanator on it. It's 99.9% clean. Quite, you can have a look at that as well later on. I'll search you all before you go anyway. But again, this was in the early 1800s when they were smelting. And this was still working by 1916. Wasn't necessarily smelting like in the heyday, but they used part of it, I think, in the First World War. It was still there, and then of course they bulldozed it down, and now it's called Melanator Housing Estate. This is the Emporium, which is still there. This is opposite the White Hart. If you work for Harvey's of Ale, you've got half wages and half tokens. And you could only put the tokens by your goods in his shops. But in 1831, the government brought out what they call the Truck Act, which meant that if you earned £5, you should be paid £5. But it never got down here, really, until the late 1880s. So when you look at Pempole Avenue there, which is, what's going on? A lot of people put shops. As soon as it became law down here, people that lived on the terrace built shops in the front garden. So they had their wages, they could buy what they want. So he went without me. He had to, you had to work for him and you had to have his goods off him. So. Well, that's a chapel, see, I've already talked about that. There we are. That's the same chapel. It's a market now. This is going over the wheel bore. There's a boiler there, as you see. Believe it or not, there's 36 horses pulling that. That's what we talk about horsepower, isn't it? 36 horses. Now, I showed you the grist mill. Again, when we go for a walk, you will walk under this. Yeah, which is just as we're going up to St. Michael's now. This was demolished in 1939. It was actually a mint humbug factory in the beginning of the 1900s. But by 1939, well, with war, well, maybe 1938, but with war, with Germany coming on, this was such a tall building, they decided, get it down. It wasn't very good anyway, but get it down, because the Germans could line up with that and take out the electric works, this year's secret, they didn't know, ICI works, the SO works, etc., etc. So that was taken down by them. This is the mill plant, as I said to you, which is with the ropery and when they made all the shapes for the ships, you know, the hammer works and all. That's the old buildings, but I mean, there's nothing there now. But they were in the beginning. They started with 3 water wheels, and then of course they eventually went over to steam. And again, which I'll point out when we go there, right in front of that, there's a row of houses there. And that's called Mill Road. They were built in 1805, 1806. So you come out the front door, and your job is right there. That's where you worked. So they were built by ours, and that's where you worked. You know. This is another view of the mill pond. You know, the Colosseum. This is just what you see is inside. That's what it looked like. This is where, when they was casting everything, it was no good casting, like you said, the big 25 tons and all the beams and everything else, and putting them on ships and taking them out to Africa or America, and they don't fit. What good's that? So this was the main machine shop. This is where they put a lot of stuff together and then disassembled it, loaded it on those ships, and knew then they could go abroad. But in their, well, I say their wisdom, but 1984, the council, Penwith then, decided we needed a few more houses. They give permission on a Thursday night, and within 10 days, it was bulldozed down, completely gone. That's what's there now. I will, when you do come over, I will give you some leaflets with some pictures on it, so if you don't want to imagine it, I'll just show it to you. You know? But that's what's there now. So this is when the Hale Foundry Trust was formed. Now it's the Hale Heritage. I've been there 10 years now, Hale Heritage Centre. But that's when it was formed. That was one of the fantastic building, and we didn't want no more bulldozed down. That's all our history on, isn't it? This is the Downs. Now we're going up the hill now. Am I right for time, yeah? So now 10 o'clock. Now the Bird Paradise was built in 1862 for the Harvey family. This is the Downs. This was built for Mr. Rawlins. He was one of the bosses for Harvey's of Hale. The Downs is right by the hospital. There's the Downs there. That's St. Michael's Hospital, actually. But the Downs was where the nuns went in 1901 when they came over. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But they had a school down here, a Catholic school. Might be a photo there. Here we are. This was a school in the garden. 7 acres of enclosed, because they were nuns, it was all fenced up in. But they grew almost a lot of stuff that they could throughout the year. I tell everybody again, and this is true, because my late father, he was disabled in the war, but he worked all his life. He only had one arm, but he worked all his life on farms and all that. In the last 8 years of his life, he got a job in there, gardening. When you're 65 2 years ago, you had to retire. You had no option, you had to finish. My father didn't want to finish, but he had to finish. When he went to work on his last day, this is true, he got that upset. They had to put him in the hospital and sedate him. When he woke up 3 o'clock in the morning, he often told us this. He said, I didn't know, boy, if I was in heaven or where I was. Because when he woke up, there was 3 nuns around his bed praying. Now this is the sort of people that they were, the nuns. You know, they were absolutely fantastic. There's the gardens there, look. I'll just go on a bit from them. All the yew trees all the way down to the, but of course, I was never allowed to go in there until recently. I went over there. It's a home up there now, called the Downs as a home, but we did a garden fight in St. Michael's, and I had permission, because I told my father there. I was able to walk with my dad where he worked. You know, what a feeling. This is inside the Downs. This is what the nuns' place was like. inside. This is the library. Now this is where they at first they all had, because they were Catholics. Edmund Sedding designed the building and inside, Edmund Sedding, but his nephew, Dando Sedding, designed the gardens. If you go into Bird Paradise now, you'll see that. That was haunted. As I said, the nuns used to pray in the library in one of the big rooms in the Downs, and that was built in 1927. This is Miss Ellis. She's the one that took over the Downs in the year 1900. She come down with her sister, and in today's money, she had the equivalent then of £14 million. The Haven in Penzance, which is now a home, it was a school. She started all that, and then she put chapels built from all the way from down there, almost all the way up to London. She had the equivalent of £14 million. Now here we are, look, this is St Michael's Hospital. Now this was called the Croft before it was called St Michael's Hospital. Now, when the nuns came in 1901, and the Daughters of the Liège came, she invited them over, of course, being Catholic. And this is the Downs. And then she said to them, you can have it all, provided I can live here with my sister